Well, welcome back to the sound section of the Words to Live By Community Art Project. In the last video, we talked a little bit about some of the basics of Audacity. We covered things like the layout in terms of what's at the top and what's here in this big gray bottom area. And also began going through some of the tools and the buttons that we'll be using to both set up and also record and edit our audio files. So in case you missed that and you maybe have some questions about what was in there, feel free to pause this video and go back to that one for some more information about some of that. So in this video, we'll be talking more in depth about how to actually record an audio piece and some of the functions around there. So before we get started actually recording, there is a little bit of setup that we have to do. So the big things include going through these four menus here that we talked about in the last video for things like setting up which microphone you want to use, which speakers, or they call it the output, which speakers or which output you want to use. So making sure those are set up. And again, if you want more info about that, feel free to go back to the last video, the Intro to Audacity video. And before we start recording, we're also going to turn on this microphone monitoring up here, which we again covered in the last video. But as a reminder to do that, you just click this button that says click to start monitoring. And you can see once I've done that, these green bars will show up. And again, those are sort of telling me, giving me a gauge for how loud my audio is that's coming through the microphone. So I think I said in the last video you might want to be between that like -18 and -36 range. I would say you'll still be totally okay going even up to like -12, so maybe going to -12 to -36. If you start going into that range between -6 and 0, especially beyond to the right of these blue lines here, these little blue dashes, then your audio is going to be really loud and it will be uncomfortable for someone to listen to, but it might also get a little distorted and be kind of hard to hear. So if your audio is right up, in that range off the bat, I would say maybe move a little further away from your computer or move your computer a little further away from you and see if that helps. In the same way, if you're sort of down in this -48, -54 range, your audio is going to be really, really quiet. And people may not be able to hear it, even if the volume on their computers and their speakers is set up all the way. So you want to be careful with that too. And again, try and stick between this like -12 and -36 range, because that'll be a pretty comfortable volume that people will be able to hear at for the most part. So to get started recording, we actually don't have to do anything outside of just pressing this red record button that we talked about a little bit before. And then again, to stop it, we're going to want to press this gray square. So I'm just going to record something quickly, just a little introductory test audio. So let's get that going. Welcome to the Words to Live By Community Art Project. This is a test recording for teaching purposes. So you can see to start it, I pressed again the red circle, the record button. And to stop it, I pressed this gray square to stop. So you can see when I pressed the red button to start recording, this box showed up. So this is called a track. You can see up here it says audio track. So a track is basically sort of one section of recorded audio. So you can have multiple tracks in an overall file. So for example, when you might have experienced this is if you're listening to a song, from your phone or from a computer. As you're listening to the song, it is just that one file and that one song, but within that, it was probably recorded with a couple different tracks. So for example, in a song, you might have the vocal recording from the person who's singing. You might also have, let's say, a beat, maybe from, a set of drums, or maybe an electronic beat. And then maybe, let's say, you also have a piano and a guitar. So you have all these things coming together. Each of those was probably a separate track in the original audio file. So for example, in what I was just talking about, there would have been 4 different tracks. One would have been the recording of the singer's voice, one would have been for the beat, for the drums, the other would have been the piano, and the other would have been the guitar. And when you put all of these separate tracks together, you get that one cohesive song and that one audio piece. So this will just be one track for us for now. And you can see there are these 2 different sections. I think these correspond to the left and the right, or like the 2 separate channels, I should say, because remember we were talking about the settings for stereo versus mono. So if you have stereo, I think that's what this will be for. So you can see over here on the track, there are a couple different buttons that we have directly on the track. So one of these is mute. So mute and solo, both of these are going to be if you have multiple tracks. These aren't really super useful if you only have one audio track, but if you have a couple different ones, they can be really helpful. So mute will, mute or silence the track that you've selected. So for example, if I had 2 more audio tracks down here and I hit mute, this one would be quiet, while the other 2 you'd be able to hear. And the solo button is the exact opposite. It only plays that track that you've selected. So again, if I had this vocal recording right here and then 2 more, and I hit solo, once I hit the play button, I would only hear this track. The other thing are these 2 little, they look kind of like rulers almost. They have these little tick marks. So this one with the plus and the minus signs, this one is for the volume of the entire audio track. So to use this, you just click and then you drag. So if you go to the right, the audio will get louder. You can see it goes up. It says plus 24 dB. dB stands for decibels, which is just like inches or centimeters. It's just like a measure specifically for sound. So you can see if I go up, it goes plus, and if I go left, it goes to minus. And it'll automatically be placed at 0, which is just sort of the neutral place. That's where your audio will start out. And the L and the R works the same way. You click and drag. And what this is for is pretty much moving your audio to the right or the left. So what does this mean? If you've ever worn a pair of earbuds and listened to a piece of music, maybe you've taken one of the earbuds out and you've only been able to hear part of the music. Let's say maybe, like the sound of the guitar. But you maybe can't hear the rest of it. You can't hear that piano. If you put that earbud you took out back in and take out the other one, then maybe you can hear the piano but not the guitar. So if you've ever experienced that before, that's sort of what this is the left and the right alignment. So I would guess you may not play around with this too much if you're not creating a piece of music. It can be fun to experiment with, though. Let's say if you're creating a piece that has a beat and you only want it to be in the right ear, but you want something else to come out of the left and have them blend together really nicely, this can be kind of fun to experiment with. So again, for that, you just click and drag to the left or the right. I'm going to just set it back to center. So that's pretty much how you record your audio. That's sort of the basics of it. But how do I listen back to what I just recorded? So going back up here to the top left, we talked about these buttons a little bit in the last video, but the green triangle is the play button, so that'll play your audio from the beginning. And these two black lines, this is for pause. So I'll just show you an example of this.
Welcome to the Words to Live By Community Art Project.
And you can see I just paused it and it stopped exactly where it was playing in the recording. And if I hit the pause, this is important, you don't want to hit the play button again because that'll start it from the beginning. So if you just want to start it from wherever you paused, you press the pause button again.
This is a test recording for teaching purposes.
And you can see I've reached the end of the audio there. So let's say I maybe want to add a little bit more. I want to record a little bit more to add to the end of this. That is totally possible. You just hit the red record button again and it'll start going at the end of whatever you've already recorded, I should say. So let's try that out here. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. And I just press stop again. So now when we listen back, we'll have the first recording I made and then the second recording. So let's see if we can try that out.
Welcome to the Words to Live By Community Art Project. This is a test recording for teaching purposes. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3.
So that's sort of how it works. If you want to create something that's longer, or let's say you have recorded the first, part of something you've written down, but you want to practice the second part before you record it, you can just record that first part and then pause it and then just hit record again when you're ready for the second part. So you don't have to do your entire recording at one time. The other thing that can be helpful to know about is that you can get a better look at these, at the actual audio that you've recorded. So to do that, you want to actually put your cursor into the middle here between this dark gray and this light gray section, and you should get these two little arrows that are pointing down and up. So if you click and drag up or down, you can see the audio, it doesn't get huge on this one, but it gets a little larger and smaller as you pull up and down. This won't actually change anything about your audio. It won't change the volume of the audio. It won't, make any other modifications. It's really just meant to be a visual thing so that it's easier for you to see. So it can be helpful for that. Something of note is that if you do have two separate pieces of audio that you've recorded, like I do here, you want to be careful with this little highlighted area that might only play part of it back. So if you run into an issue where it's only playing this part, let's say, but not the rest, you might want to just click toward the beginning up here, and that might help play all of it. So the other thing you might want to do is record a second track. So, let's say you want a couple things coming together at one time. Like we sort of mentioned, maybe you want to bring an instrument in. Or maybe you just want to have some other natural sound to go along, like maybe the sound of the wind outside in the trees, or maybe a sound of cooking, or just anything really. So how do I add another track so that I can include more audio? So to do that, you go up to the top, and there are all these options at the very top of your screen. Right in the middle here is tracks. So you want to click that, and then hit add new. And you can choose here if you want a mono, a stereo. I'm not totally sure what a label or a time track is, so I would just stick to mono or stereo. I'm going to choose stereo. And you can see it added this new track down here. So I'm going to record something quickly on top of or under, however you want to say. I'm going to record something in this second track that's going to go with this first track. So you do want to be a little careful. I am going to hit mute on this first track I recorded so that it doesn't play out loud while I'm recording in this new track. And the other thing is you also want to make sure that you've selected the correct track to record on. So how do I know that the right track is selected? If you see this light blue color over here and sort of throughout, and you have this yellow line around the edge, that'll show you which track you have selected. And to select a track, you just click on it. So you can see now that I've clicked on this one is blue and has the yellow outline. And this has gone sort of back to gray. So if I click on this again, the blue and the yellow shows up. The blue and the yellow shows up if I click back on this one. So since I'm trying to record to this track, I want to make sure this one's selected. And then from there, I can just hit record. And maybe I'll just add a simple sound here of my hands rubbing together and clapping. I'll stop the recording. All right, so now I'm going to unmute this top track and let's have a listen and see what this sounds like.
Welcome to the Words to Live By Community Art Project. This is a test recording for teaching purposes. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Stop the recording.
So you can see how those tracks kind of maybe don't make sense together, but how they do kind of work together and play at the same time. And, you know, let's say we wanted the clapping to be quieter. We didn't want to hear it quite as much. Or maybe you wanted my voice to be quieter. Either one of those, that's where we'd start using some of these tick mark options here, like the volume that we talked about a little while ago, to make this track a little louder, or make this one a little quieter, whatever you'd prefer to do with your audio. So one more thing for us to maybe discuss in this video is how to actually save your Audacity file. So this actually works a lot like saving for other programs like Microsoft Word, or Excel, PowerPoint, anything else where you're, maybe editing a file and then saving it. So to save your Audacity file, again, we'll go up to this menu in the top, and there's this option File, and we'll click that, and then we can hit Save Project. So if you're saving for the first time, you're going to want to choose this Save Project option. If you're maybe saving a copy of it, maybe to send to someone else, or maybe you want a copy that you can play around with and edit a little bit more for fun, you can do Save Project As. But I'm just going to choose Save Project because this is the first time that I'll be saving this. And they put up this little warning, Save Project is for an Audacity project, not an audio file. So this is basically just letting you know that the format that this is going to save in can only be opened and played in Audacity. So for example, if you use something like iTunes or some other media player on your computer, you won't be able to play this in that. You can only play this in Audacity. In the next video, where we talk about editing and things like that, I'll also discuss what they talk about here, which is exporting, and that's what will allow you to, play the file elsewhere on your computer. But for now, we're just going to hit OK, and we'll save a title for this. So I'm just going to call this test recording. And again, I'll just point out, I am doing this on an Apple computer, so if you're using a Windows computer or something that runs on the Linux operating system, this might look a little bit different. So I'm going to save this to my documents section as test recording and hit save, and that should save it. So those are some of the basics of how we record an audio piece in Audacity. And in our next video, we'll be talking more in depth about how to actually edit your audio once you're ready to head on to that next step. So feel free to practice doing some recording in Audacity, and I guess I'll see you in the next video whenever you feel ready to do some editing.